A-game, I'm Rob Akampora, somewhere in my bunker in Bradley Beach, New Jersey. To the left of me, a man who is familiar to many in the View Askew universe. As a matter of fact, I'm doing the calculating, Scott. I think you make number 5 for me since I've launched this podcast. At least 5 members of the View Askew universe have been on this podcast, which I'm totally grateful for, by the way. And by the way, there is a new movie that Scott is in. We're going to talk about it. Chris, if you can throw up the poster for it, it's called Wit's End. It is now available. You can pick it up through streaming services. We'll give you more of the details throughout the podcast. But the man who will forever be the Chewlies Guy, and also from Vulgar, which we will talk about as well. Scott Schiaffo, how you doing, bud? Thanks for bringing your A-game.
Doing good, buddy. Doing good. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad you came on. I really appreciate this. And
sure.
Obviously, the thing with Clerks, I mean, this movie just continues to gain more and more cult status. It may wind up being, before we all die, the number 1 cult classic movie of all time.
Oh, well, you know, it would have to probably be stratified by years and genre, you know, maybe of 90s indie comedy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when you think about things like the Romero film, now that Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
I grew up with a lot of indie sort of flavored films. John Cassavetes was a personal
good one. Very good one.
Yeah, idol of mine. But it was really a dream come true for all of us, not just Kevin, you know?
Yeah. Looking back on that time, there's a great story, and I know you've probably talked about this before, so I apologize that I'm bringing it up, but it is a great story. You were nearly arrested before you even got the chance to do the screen test for your part. What was going on during that, 24, 48-hour period?
Well, what happened was I saw the audition notice in a classified section of a paper up here in northern New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Back then, you know, this is pre-internet and cell phones, and it was just actors would watch the trade papers for auditions, and most of the stuff was usually in New York City, every once in a while in New Jersey, but it was mostly going into New York, occasionally Connecticut. You know, the indie film scene was just starting to take off. So I saw his ad in a classified, luckily, and it was like an hour and a half away, but I said, there's a guy in Jersey shooting a film. I've got to get to this audition. Because
right.
it was much more rare. You know, now you throw a rock and you hit somebody making a movie on an iPhone, but it wasn't that way then. So I drove down in my beat up car, and I had Alice in Chains blasting, you know.
Nice.
Yeah. And it was, you know, the nice Jersey Shore town there down in Leonardo. And I was quite early. I was like an hour and a half, 2 hours early. And they were right along the shore. The theater that the auditions were in were not far from the shore.
Right.
But it was closed at that point. But I wandered off onto a jetty, and I started rehearsing. And I guess from the mainland, it looked like there's a guy who was maybe losing his mind out on the jetty gesturing wildly. They thought maybe I was either suicidal or inebriated or whatever. So they called me in, and luckily, you know, they saw I was fine, and it all added up. I said, I'm going to an audition right up the street.
Right.
Please, you know, I don't want to miss the audition. If you're going to arrest me, can you know? And I don't think they were ever going to arrest me, but you know, it was a little weird, and I never shared that story back then because I didn't want to shed a negative light on myself, having just met everybody, you know.
Right, right.
So that was that, and then you know we did the you did a prepared monologue at that first audition. Nobody read from the script. And I had done a monologue from the movie Diner.
Oh, and, good choice. Good choice.
Yeah. I did the Daniel Stern character, Shrevey. Mm-hmm. But like most auditions, when I think I did great, I wouldn't get a call. And when I think I did poorly, I would get a call.
Okay, so where was your mindset at this point? You do the audition, you're thinking...
I thought I didn't do all that well. I didn't think I really gave what I felt I wanted to give. But luckily for me, a week later, the phone rang, and they were calling back to say, you know, we liked what you did. Can you come down and read from the script?
Right.
So I was really excited for that. And then that second round that was down at the rec center, I think it was. I didn't meet Brian officially O'Halloran there, but I saw him off in the corner, you know, reading, studying for his part, and it was really exciting. They gave me the sides, and I went off to read them. And there's a break between the Chewlies Guys scenes where they shoot out to Jay and Bob outside. So I only thought there was the one scene. So I went in and we read it, and they're like, "Okay, great. Now let's read the next scene." And I was like,
"What?
Next scene, what?" Yeah. And the next scene was really the long one, the craziness, the riot.
Right.
I was like, wow, I didn't even see that there was a second scene. But it went really well, and you know, it was just a wonderful experience and exciting. And Kevin was really, really funny. I'm older than a lot of the folks in the cast, by about 5 to 8 years older than most of the rest of the cast.
Mm-hmm.
But Kevin really impressed me as somebody who was older for his years, wise, he had a great command of language. He was really funny, really driven. And that's all I ever saw until he sent us the screener. I didn't see the whole script. I just knew the Chewlies guy. I have no idea what came before or after until he sent us the screener. Mm-hmm. So, you know, mind blown when I finally got to see the screener. I was like, wow, like, this is like the craziest thing I ever saw. I didn't think we would have a shot at across the board sort of widespread because of the language, not because of the quality, just because the language was so crude.
And the funny thing is, Scott, that's what got the movie some attention nationally at first, was like, oh, wow, here's this film that's getting some interesting flack by the film commission, who are trying to make this a non-R-rated movie, but based on not because of nudity, but because of language.
Right, yeah, they almost got slapped with the NC-17.
Correct.
And then they got Dershowitz. It was exciting. It was really exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Back then, you know, and I'll never forget when I spoke to Kevin and he told me that they screened it at Woodstock, which, again, mind blown. You know, I mean, I'm a musician since I'm a very young child, so music is my first passion.
Right.
Film is a real close second, but to find out that they screened it, you know, on the big screen, it was middle of the night, I think, but that was just so amazing. And then when it finally came out and, you know, it did really well at Cannes, it was just the most amazing ride. And it never really stopped, you know, it just continued to grow over the years, which is just a real big gift for all of us involved.
Hey, Chris, if you want to put up the still from his scene in Clerks, I mean, memorable photo. There it is, part of that whole rant that the Chewlies guy went on. And you make a good point. You're saying, Scott, that this thing hasn't died. One of the great gifts that I think has happened to you, and I see in the photos on your Facebook page, you get a kick out of going to these ComicCons before the pandemic hit. You've been going, I guess, semi-regularly for at least a couple of years, and you're going out, you're meeting fans, and it's got to be just an absolute thrill that all of a sudden it's like, okay, they may be here for a couple, but they're actually... You remember my character. Oh, my God. How cool is this?
Well, I got to tell you, what really strikes me is, and then, you know, again, when you spoke about Vulgar, again, I'm playing a less, you know, very undesirable, you know, a real horrible person, basically. But the fans just embraced it in a way that, like, they enjoy the film so much that the fact that let's face it, the Chewlies guy, he is an a-hole.
Yeah, but he is, but he's entertaining.
They enjoyed him. They don't, you know, they don't make it a personal thing. And like, you know, occasionally there'll be some people like, oh, you know, screw the Chewlies guy, he's an asshole. But that's true because the Chewlies guy is a horse's ass. But it's a big gift because I get to continue on in the industry. Lots of independent films afterwards. I got to do a lot of music work in a lot of independent films. That all started it. That really broke the ice, and it was just a gift. And the conventions they really are a wonderful, wonderful experience to kind of embrace Kevin's work. You know, I mean, they're there because they love Kevin's body of work, and I'm fortunate to be a part of that. You know.
Yeah. Scott Schiaffo is here on the A Game. You mentioned Vulgar, and I want to go back to 2000 because I remember when the movie was coming out. It was coming out through Lionsgate, so you got a major brand behind the movie, but it was like considered, in Lionsgate terms, the most controversial film they may have ever released in the history of that company. And when you look at the film, it wasn't like it was a gratuitous thing that was going on here. It was a major part of the plot, what happened to Brian's character with the gang rape. So when you put it together, it was almost like, I love the fact that Lionsgate took the chance on this and went after it and put it out there. It actually is a great film. And when you look back on it, is there any feeling of maybe even a little disappointment because you kind of say, maybe not everybody got this film?
I'm going to say no, because like a lot of films, the people who get it, we're not going to be theatrical back in the era mid-90s or late 90s.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be the kind of thing where it's a rental or now you stream it or whatever. Yeah. I pretty much said yes before reading it, because anything that came out of that crowd, to me, it was like, you know, I'm going to say yes, period. If they're interested in me, I'm interested regardless. But yeah, when I read it, I was like, wow, this is really, really pushing it. But I got to tell you, O'Halloran does an amazing job. That's such a bold performance.
Yeah, it is.
You know, and I don't think the film would, maybe, it wasn't treated real fairly at the time. But, we had Howard Stern, who for a week before it went nuts every morning on the show and drummed up so much publicity, like he was incensed by it. And I think he threw the VHS in the garbage, and then Gary and the rest of the gang fished it out. And so, I mean, you make up or buy that kind of press.
Oh, no, that kind of press is sort of like, oh, thank you from the heavens. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I agree that, like, as a film, as an indie film, if you sans the content of the story, but as a film, visually and the flow and the performances and the real twisted, dark humor in it, there's a lot of filmmaker friends of mine who over the years have said, I think that's a really fine film, and it wasn't treated very fairly because of the nature of the content. And Brian O'Halloran tells a very funny story about how when he got the script, Brian Johnson had said, I got something and I wrote this with you in mind.
Oh, God.
And then he read it and it's just like, oh, really? You had me in mind for that.
Right, really.
But that was a wonderful experience too. What character actor worth their salt doesn't want to have a big standoff scene with the police? I mean,
exactly.
It's guns and cops, and this is great. I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Now, I've been reading that there's been some rumor about Vulgar 2.
Yeah, it's been a good handful of years that he was talking, Brian Johnson was talking about, he had a treatment, he had an idea for a sequel. And we were at a con in, I believe it was Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And it was all of us and the comic book men, and Jay and Kevin were there. It was a really big con. And Brian Johnson was sharing that he had a treatment for a part 2, hinted that possibly Travis Lee may come back, which I was over the moon. But either way, whether I come back or not, I'm a fan and I'm in.
Right.
But since that time period, I think it's been rewritten, I think at least 1 or 2 more times. So Brian O'Halloran kind of knows the state of it better than I do. Brian Johnson is working on something for it. I don't know where the story stands now, but I know it's in his wheelhouse of stuff he's doing. I couldn't tell you much more than that, though.
Oh, we'll look forward to see what comes down the pike, especially with Brian Johnson, who's been involved with View Askew since the inception, and of course was the creator of Vulgar back in 2000. Scott Schiaffo is here on the A Game. You mentioned Comic Book Man. My favorite episode, no surprise, had you in mind. Hey, Chris, put up the bowlers. Put up them 4 guys. I'm telling you. There they are. Schiaffo, Muse, O'Halloran, and Ernie O'Donnell, and the invasion at the bowling alley. I get the feeling that was a lot of fun. That had to be just like a blast of a fun day.
It was. It was really a lot of fun. I hadn't seen a handful of those guys in years, really. And it was such a warm, welcoming set, and I didn't know much about what was going to be happening.
Right.
And they brought us towards the back, and then I saw the jerseys. I was like, wow, they got us our own jerseys with our names and characters. I was just like, this is the greatest thing. And then it was suggested, they said, if I would mind parodying the Jesus character from Lebowski with the hairnet,
right?
And I was down for that. I thought that was great because it kind of made my character a bit of a visual gag. Because, you've got 8 guys. You've got all 4 comic book men. You've got 4 of us from Clerks. Everybody can't speak in a 25-minute show. So I figured at least I'll be a visual gag, which was great. And it was just so much fun. A week or 2 before I went, my lady friend and I pushed her to go bowling with me because I don't really bowl, and I didn't want to show up and really suck,
Oh, you would have never lived. You never would have lived that down.
Oh man, forget it. But chicanery in reality television, a lot of what I could tell you that we were all present in that bowling alley. Other than that, everything else, was kind of reality TV unfolding right there. It was a lot of fun.
Sounds like it was, and it's great to bring up because, after all, over the weekend, Ming Chen did celebrate his birthday, so we'd like to wish Ming a very happy birthday, as he's probably watching this podcast somewhere from the Shared Universe studios, even though he's not here physically with us, or else we put him up here. But Scott Schiaffo is here on the A Game. There's a great quote that I found that you had said. I think you said it at one of the conventions. If you don't mind, I wrote it down, and I think this is really just a great quote about life in general. And you said, if you think you can be happy doing anything else, go do it. But if you believe this is really for you, whatever that is, then strap in and realize it's going to be a lot of hard knocks, but you have to have the passion for it. I mean, I think that applies to just about anything we do in life, but especially if you're somebody who has the passion to pursue a dream like acting or music or broadcasting, whatever the case may be. I mean, I thought it was just an incredible quote.
Well, thank you. I can't take credit. I know I heard that growing up from one of my idols. I don't know who that was now, sadly. It could have been John Belushi, John Lennon. It could have been Johnny Thunders. It could have been a lot of guys.
Right.
Or maybe it was an amalgam of, but I heard that if you're not in it 110%, try something else because it is full of heartbreak. I mean, really full of heartbreak. And most actors, even the most successful ones, hear no 80% of the time, 90% of the time, and hear yes maybe 10, and then you work with the roles you get.
Yeah.
But it's the nature of the beast, especially acting. Certainly, almost anything in the creative arts, whether it's writing, stand-up comedy, acting, music. I've been immersed in music and acting for the camera. Acting for the camera came on a little later in my life, late teens, college. But I've been a musician since I'm like 10 years old, and I wanted nothing else but to do something in the arts. And very thankfully for me, Clerks enabled, and I was, like I said, older. I was, nearing in on my 30s when the film was actually released. But it helped open up doors to get other gigs, both in the film world, in the music world. And then, of course, I also proceeded to go into like a decade and a half of really hardcore alcohol and drugging. That's another whole story. But it's not easy taking on a career in the arts. It's a lot of heartache.
I want to take on two things that you just brought up. One, because ironically, I just did a podcast with Matt Pinfield. And Matt has been very open about his recent bouts with alcoholism and drugs. He's basically at the point in his life where he just goes, yeah, I did it. So what? I'm not going to let that define who I am. And you, as somebody who has dealt with your addictions for years, you feel like you're doing fine, but it's always there. It's not like something that you consciously say. It's always like, hi, I'm over here. But yet you kind of found your rhythm, let's say. And is that sort of the best advice you would give to somebody who's dealing with demons, let's say? To kind of just, you got to find your rhythm to kind of go forward and live a good life.
Well, I'll tell you, Rob, that's a really difficult one to give any type of concise answer, because I feel I was very much, I don't know where I stand with my convictions on religion, or I feel like I'm a spiritual person, but my beliefs really go all over the place. When I say I was blessed with congestive heart failure, that's really what it was. In 2006, I had a near fatal bout of congestive heart failure that was brought on by like a 2-week long Olympian binge of alcohol and drugs.
Oh.
And then the next handful of years, I was like a full-time heart patient, literally in and out of the hospital every couple of months and on a lot of medication. There was no place for liquor. My life it was like I was sucked out of the world I was in, and I was a full-time heart patient, for lack of a better term.
So having this happen, like you're saying, in a weird way, it saved you, and it saved you.
Without a doubt. And what happened was, a few years into it, when my heart began to get stable, it really the smoke cleared, and I realized, wow, I haven't had a drop of alcohol in like 3 years at that point, which was the longest I had ever gone in my adult life. But the real miracle was I didn't miss it, and the compulsion was gone, which I never dreamed would happen. Believe me, I had tried to quit a million times, AA. I was in a million rehabs. I was a miserable dry drunk. I was really miserable without it, and I was miserable with it, but I would always go back to being miserable with it. And I was sure I would die from it by the end of my 20s, really.
Wow.
So I feel like I was given a gift in a really weird way, that once the smoke cleared. Now, I also was being satiated those first handful of years. There was a lot of prescription medication in my life. I was having operation after operation. There was some, but they were all looked after by my doctor. There were things for anxiety because my heart was doing jumping jacks like round the clock. I had a lethal arrhythmia problem.
Wow.
And I had a lot of pain, so that was being medicated, but it was being watched by the doctors. So I think any kind of want for anything like that was satiated in a way that was already being taken care of. So, come this past 4th of July, I hadn't had a drop of alcohol in 14 years, and I hadn't had any illicit drugs in 14 years. There had been prescription, and I make that distinction because it's an important distinction to make, because that's something you have to watch. I do it with my doctors. There's no chicanery going on with it, and it works for me. That doesn't work for everybody. But alcohol was my 100% nemesis. And I was the living dead as far as an alcoholic. It was bad. But I didn't know that about Matt, actually. And I remember, he was hilarious all the time back in the late 90s. And I remember him. He's even on the Limp Bizkit record. He's in the skit. What a really great guy. I'm glad he's doing well. I really am.
Amazingly well, yes. Very happy.
I see in the comments, I want to quickly, I guess if anybody else sees them, Brian O'Halloran is saying that over the quarantine, Brian Johnson is working on the script for a Vulgar 2.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, very cool.
Right. So, yeah. Thank you all for all your feedback. Rob, I'm very much blessed with a lot of the folks who support what I do now, because it's a grassroots thing, whether it's my music or other film roles or the book. Wit's End, David Madison's latest film, Wit's End.
Right.
We're getting a lot of positive feedback on that. So I just feel blessed to be able to do it and to stay afloat, you know?
Well, let's talk about the music for a second, because you've mentioned it a lot of times, and your passion for music kind of goes hand in hand. As you said, acting is like a close second to it, but kind of putting both worlds together, scoring a film or scoring a TV show. I mean, I get the feeling that's the thing for you. That's the thing that kind of maybe gets you more jazzed up than anything else.
Well, I'll tell you, in all honesty, it's probably, they're equal in the sense of when I'm fortunate to be cast in somebody's film, who they believe in me for a role.
Right.
To me, that's super exciting, and I always give 110% because I love it. I love acting on camera. Music just goes so far back. I can't remember, like my youngest memories as a child was my older cousin literally playing me the records of the day, which was the late 60s. I was 4 or 5 years old and listening to Sgt. Pepper and the Stones and Otis Redding, Sly and the Family Stone. And, I came up with the 60s and 70s music. To me, they're equal now if I get a chance to do either. When I get to do both, that's really exciting.
Right.
But to me, they're different ways of expression. And I just feel blessed to get the opportunity to do either. It's really, really just a wonderful, wonderful thing for any actor, musician to get a gig. It's not easy.
No, it's not. And it's definitely getting harder right now in the midst of everything. So if you have projects right now, it's got to feel even more rewarding to be like going, okay, the world's been turned upside down, but I got a film coming out and I've got some other things in the cook. I mean, like you said, you got a book that you're working on. I mean, right there, that's great success. It really is.
It's a blessing. And during COVID now we've had David Madison's film released, Wit's End.
Right.
I did a film with Libby McDermott and Matt Stolley called Darkness Waits. That was dropped. I don't know if it was during. COVID now is becoming a blur. I don't know.
For everybody, it is. Trust me.
Yeah, we screened it last summer, but it was released, I think, just before or the beginning of COVID. We're doing the audio book for my written book with Scott Meany, the artist who is a close friend and one of my favorite people in the world. He did all the artwork for the book. He's doing all the artwork for the audio book, which is coming out very soon. And he took one of the poems and he illustrated it. So the CD comes with a 20-page pull-out booklet, all of his original artwork, which my mind's blown. Well, you see it, it's unbelievable. And also I did a web series for Tom Zanka called The Deep State, which is very topical. And Tom Zanka managed to get a couple episodes shot while we're all in lockdown, which is mind-blowing.
Yeah, what was that like? If you're doing a series like that while you're all in lockdown, so it's actually utilizing, Zoom or StreamYard or whatever technology is available, and you're actually doing the acting that way. Is that more difficult or is it easier? I would think it would be more difficult because you don't have the people in front of you. So it's like you have to kind of visualize a lot of this stuff as you're going along.
Yeah, well, I can't speak for the acting part because the scenes I'm in were shot before COVID.
Okay.
But I did the score for the episodes that were shot during COVID. I did the score, and the nature of the story is right up to modern times. So the characters, they're in lockdown in the story. The Deep State, it's on YouTube. Please reach out to me. Check it out on YouTube. I can't speak highly enough of Tom Zanka. Bill Sorvino is our lead actor. Amazing web series, very topical. And he was so industrious, he actually shot 2 episodes since COVID. But like you said, I do feel blessed to have a lot going on, even though, we've been in lockdown. So it's, it's all a blessing. I really, and a lot of it is owed to the wonderful View Askew universe.
They've been great to a lot of people, and I got to admit, even in my small little part of it, just to have everybody from View Askew that's been coming on this podcast, I say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it's a great feeling that it's like these contacts I made through radio 25 years ago and through the years, and I can pick up a phone and kind of go, hey, do you want to come on? And you're going, yeah, sure. I'm like, wow, thank you. I mean, it means a lot. It really does.
It's fun. It's exciting for all of us, I think. I don't think anybody in this camp has gotten to where everybody's very approachable. Anybody I've ever
agree with that
gotten,
wholeheartedly, absolutely.
And Ming is a hell of a guy, and Ming, here's an alliteration. Ming looms large in the legacy of View Askew. He's a big part of the View Askew legacy. Kevin found his footing in the late 90s through an internet-based community.
Right.
As a result of a lot of what Ming did. So when you look at it from that scope, he looms large in the legacy.
Oh, absolutely. To go from fan to web guy to comic book man to now the man who's basically taking on the podcast universe one podcast at a time. God love him for it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a poster boy for podcasting, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And listen, seven seasons of Comic Book Men. Wow, that was awesome. Right?
Nobody would have thought that. Everybody probably would have thought, oh, maybe this will get a couple, 3 years. To get 7 seasons and nearly 100 episodes, that's an incredible accomplishment. It really is.
Those guys are all personable. That's why.
Oh yeah, no, I can attest to that 1,000%. We're going to talk a little bit about Wits End at the end. We're up to the random shop segment of the A Game with Scott Schiaffo. Okay, just random questions I came up with based on your personality, a little social media dive. I think I may have gotten a couple of interesting ones. Let me go with probably one that we were talking about since we talked about Comic Book Ben. Who is the best bowler in the View Askew universe?
Wow. Huh. Well, I think it's between 3. I think it's either Ming, Zapsik, or O'Halloran. I think.
I bowled with O'Halloran. He's pretty good. I do know that. He is pretty good.
Yeah, that O'Halloran. That guy is really something. Pretty much everything he attempts, he does really well. But I know Ming is quite an astute athlete overall. And Zapsik, I remember, was throwing some smoke that day, from what I remember.
Okay, good to know. All right, so you are the Chewlies gum guy no matter what. So what was your favorite gum growing up?
Bazooka Joe.
Ooh, good one.
Hey, man, I'm super old. I mean, so,
Yeah, but it was like going, here we go. It's rolled up sugar, and you got a little comic with it. Oh, my God.
Right. The comic was cool, and the gum was hideous, but,
Hey, come on. We all were kids. We all just wanted sugar. We didn't care about the taste at that point. Oh, it's got sugar. Let's have it. Okay, looking back, I want to go back to your young self, and this gives me an excuse to go, Chris, put up the photo of a very young Scott Schiaffo. Well, that's young, but there you go. The really young Scott Schiaffo.
Woohoo!
Hey, woohoo! Okay, so I want to go back. What was the worst advice you... There you go. Nice. Boom. Thank you. Worst advice you ever got at that point in your young career?
Worst advice?
The reason I'm going here is I heard a story, something about one of your teachers basically not encouraging you to go.
Yeah, okay. Oh, all right, yeah, that turned out to be a good thing in a sense.
Okay.
Because in high school, I was primarily known as a musician, and I was a super geeky kid in high school until junior year when I brought my guitar into school. Then all of a sudden I was accepted by everybody, which was awesome.
Yes.
But it was true. I was really like I was chubby. I was unathletic. I wasn't very outgoing. And then I lost a little bit of weight. I brought my guitar into school. And, it's funny, but everybody, all the cliques liked the musicians. The jocks liked the musicians. The musicians liked the musicians.
The musicians, it's true.
The stoners liked the musicians. The chicks liked the musicians. All of a sudden, I was kind of getting acceptance. But I got the acting bug, and I'm not sure exactly where that started, but I tried out for the school play. Mm-hmm. And I tried out opposite my best friend in the world, who's a professional actor today, Freddie Iacova. And our drama teacher kind of pulled me aside, and he said, I'm going to make you stage manager. Maybe you should think about something else. So, apparently my audition was horrendous, but it didn't destroy me in the way that you think it might.
And that's funny you're saying, forgive me for interrupting you, Scott. Knowing how impressionable kids are, you would have thought that the instant reaction would have been like devastation.
Well, I was 16 at the time, maybe 15, 16. I was trying out for the part of Renfield in Dracula.
Okay.
It was kind of the first time I ever had given anything like that a real shot.
Okay.
But man, I wanted it so badly that I was just not going to take no for an answer. I kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And shortly after graduation, around 1981, I met a fellow who ran a cable television station. He heard me play classical guitar. He asked me to come on and do classical guitar on his show. And I did. And then he said, would you like a little spot every week on the local cable access network? I think he wanted me to do a little classical guitar show, but I came back with a little cast of 8 characters, and we did sketch comedy for 2 years.
Oh,
and it went over really well. And this individual was a art critic for the local paper. And he pulled me aside and he said, I think I saw something in a couple of your skits where you may have the makings of a serious actor. And then on that, I never let that go, and I just held on to that. So the advice I was given in high school, it might have hurt at the time,
right?
But I became the stage manager, and I enjoyed it anyway, and I just wasn't going to take no for an answer. So a lot of it was built on real piss and vinegar, honestly.
Gotta love that. Gotta love that. All right, 2 more questions and random shots, and we're going to go down the music path. So you are somebody who does a lot of scoring. So what is the best musical score you've ever heard in a movie?
Oh, my gosh. Ooh. That's like, that's so hard. That's like asking if anybody asked me a favorite movie or a favorite band or a favorite record. It's so hard to zone in on one. I start creating categories, and I'll give you my 5 best this.
Well, what's like 2 or 3 that just came to mind as I asked that question?
Well, probably The Shining, because The Shining utilized a lot of Bela Bartok music, who was a 20th century composer, and I had I had it on vinyl as a kid, and it was chilling and weird and eerie. But I'm going to say Bela Bartok's music that was used in The Shining. I grew up with all those guys. I mean, I saw The Godfather in the theater. I was underage. My mom snuck me in. So, all that stuff really made a dent. It's hard to say.
Oh, yeah.
It's impossible to pick.
No, that's fair.
Angel Heart. That's a favorite film, really.
But that's interesting how diverse you're going with the 3 films you just mentioned. I mean, and here's 3 films that have nothing to do with each other. But how instrumental is the music in all 3 of these films? Very. So I think it's a great answer. I mean, go ahead.
Good.
No, good. Go ahead. No, finish your thought.
I was going to say that one of the telltale signs for no budget or indie filmmakers, sadly, is the audio in general is really not given the weight it needs. and not just music, but the quality of the audio in general is like the surefire sign of, you know, a kind of scrappy, no budget film, as opposed to, you don't have to have a big budget to take care of your audio and to try to have some interesting, not just sound effects, but music if you can, because, you know, hey, come on, it's sound and vision, you know, and I get that filmmakers are really caught up in the vision, but, you know, the sound is just really the component that helps you sort of give up that willing suspension of disbelief.
Very good point. Now, to wrap up, I wanted to go down the soundtrack avenue. I know it's going to be hard to pick one, but I'm going to pinpoint this as far as a scale of 1 to 10, because the impact Clerks soundtrack had on me when I was in radio working at Alternative, and all of a sudden the sleeper song of that album was Got Me Wrong by Alice in Chains, where even though the song they were promoting was Soul Asylum, it was the Alice in Chains one I think that had the bigger impact. But you and I kind of grew up around the same time. We know how big soundtracks were in the 80s and 90s. So just on a scale of 1 to 10, Clerks soundtrack, what would you give it?
Well, you know, of course I'm partial.
And I know that as you're giving this score.
Well, let me tell you, I loved all that music. I remember, I'll try to make this quick. I had a lot of really nice phone calls with Kevin and Scott Mosier the year they were putting everything together when it was going to be released. And they had just gotten a box full of CDs from Sony to choose what music they wanted, which they were like kids in a candy store, because now all of a sudden,
they had to be,
you know, and I was already a huge Alice in Chains fan. So between the tracks that were picked and the dialogue snippets, you know, I mean, it's definitely one of my all-time favorite soundtracks.
Well, I was about to say, you bring up something very interesting. So you probably heard Got Me Wrong before anybody else did. What was your first impression when you heard it? Because I remember when I was hearing it working in radio, and I thought, oh my God, this may be one of the best things Alice in Chains has ever done.
Well, you know, like I said, I love that band. I was listening to Alice in Chains Dirt on cassette on my drive to the audition. I mean, I was you know, I was a rabid fan of what was coming up at that time, because, you know, grunge kind of did to the music scene what punk did maybe 10 years earlier, which was just shake things up. It was all DIY, or allegedly DIY, you know, but then of course, you know, No Image became an image. But I love that music, you know, and Soundgarden and all those people. And I was a big Replacements fan, and Tommy Stinson's Bash and Pop had a great track.
Yes, great band.
You know, another sleeper band. So, I mean, I was so in when I saw what the soundtrack was, you know.
Good stuff, my friend. Wit's End is the new movie that is out. Now, what is this, the 4th time you've worked with Brian in a film? Because you've done Clerks, Vulgar, Shooting Clerks, and now Wit's End. Am I missing any?
Wow, you got it. I guess that's the 4th film. I had the pleasure and the honor of working up, well, the reboot, but the reboot is a cameo.
Right.
So we're in the reboot together, but this is the 4th time. Wit's End was a ton of fun, because I'm fortunate to be able to call those two guys my friends. So,
Brian and Dave Madison, by the way, he's the creator and other actors.
Buddies,
yes. Yeah.
Buddies getting to, you know, riff with each other. And they were super generous to the characters that we're playing, are loosely based on ourselves, obviously.
Right.
And I kind of got to be the, you know, the crotchety curmudgeon. And I got a lot of comedy juice out of that, thanks to Brian and David.
Very cool.
But the score for that means a lot to me, because David allowed me to really just open up and suggest a wide array of, there's orchestral, there is some guitar, which I don't always get a chance to work guitar into a score, and I did. And because it's such a visual film, that when you do get the music, it really kind of heightens the visual. And
I agree with that, because I saw the trailer, and that's exactly what I was getting. It was like, it's building. It's really building the intensity of some of the scenes that I'm seeing in the trailer. And it does make it, and again, that's the mark of a good trailer too, that everything is coming together. And now I go, now I have to see this movie because it got my attention in that 90 seconds.
Brian, David Madison just pointed out we actually worked on Middle Village together too, but I'm not on camera. I'm doing the score for Middle Village. So that's 5 films we have in common, which is pretty awesome.
It's good stuff. Now, Wits End is available through streaming services, so they can find it pretty much anywhere. We'll put the information up on my podcast for if you want to watch it again. You'll have the information right there on Facebook for you. And please, it's now available if you're looking for something new, keywords, because there's not a lot of new stuff coming out, not a lot of new TV shows, not a lot of new movies. Here's something new, something cool, something worth checking out. Good people involved between Dave Madison, Brian O'Halloran, and that man right there, Scott Schiaffo. Hey, man. Thank you. Thank you for putting on this. Thank you for doing it. Good seeing you. It's been too long. Last time I saw you was over at Brian, so it's been way too long. Hopefully after this pandemic, we will get together at some point.
That'd be nice, man. But thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate it. Much
appreciated too, brother. Hey, listen, that's it for the A-Game this week. I'm Rob Akampora. We'll come back next week, and I believe I already know that I'm probably going to get an email from another alumni of View Askew. So don't be surprised if Ernie O'Donnell is coming up at some point in the next couple weeks here. Yes, definite thumbs up there. Until next week, I'm Rob Akampora. Be watching on Facebook to find out more information on who's coming up next, who's bringing their A-game. You take care. Have a great week.